Is the microphone working? Okay. Well, it says I'm live. Yeah, I'm live. I can see myself. Hello, can people hear me and see me? And is this microphone working? I have noises. Good noises? Can you confirm they are good noises? Hello in Toronto. I've got somebody saying A up duck. I'm not from the north, I'm afraid. I can't respond to that. I don't know what that means. Yes, lots of yeses. Okay, we're in. Right, this time we're going to do things. This is going to be super professional. I'm going to read the questions before I answer them. Going to think about them. I've planned it. This is, yeah, this is, if you watched the last one, this is serious now. So, any questions going? Somebody can't see anything. I am next to the garbage bin, but there is no becks. Yeah, serious stuff. There's been no drinking. Best expansion for a game. Best expansion for a game. I think that's a tricky one. I was thinking about that the other day for a video. I think On the Brink for Pandemic is good, but I don't think it's the best. I actually think In the Lab for Pandemic is really good. I'm not sure I play with expansions that often to really have like a best one. I'm like immediately want to go. I'd made notes for certain questions, but I hadn't made notes for the best expansion. I wanted to have answers ready to go, and I do not have an answer ready to go for that. Right. What is the largest scale game you've played? I don't know exactly what you mean by that. I've played a mega game, which is for 300 players. So that's pretty large in its scale. And it went on for 8 hours. I played a few of those. The Watch the Skies ones that they do in London. Shut Up and Sit Down filmed a couple of them. They are really good fun. They're massive, but it's probably not what you're talking about. Largest scale. The longest game I've played would be like Game of Thrones 2nd edition, which we probably played for like 6.5 hours. Actually, that's not true. I have played Twilight Imperium 3 once, and that took even longer. So I don't know. Is that the kind of answer you're looking for? Do I like Catan? I kind of like Catan. I used to play Catan when I was, I don't know, like 12 or something. My friend had it. He had some German exchange students, and they brought it over, and so he got really hooked on it. So I would play it with him all the time, and I guess we would play it quite a lot. But that was before I was really into board games and really understood why I liked them, stuff like that. So, and I liked it, but I could never win, and I just found it quite frustrating. And then these days, I don't really have the love for it because I just prefer other stuff. I think that the dice can just be a bit frustrating. The negotiation aspect I don't like as much as in other games, but there's some simple ideas there. I think I completely understand why it is successful and why it's done so well, but I just don't especially care about it myself. How often do you play with the Shut Up and Sit Down blokes, and how do you feel about Quinn's recommending games on their podcast that you were going to review? I'll do the second one first. I don't mind him speaking on the podcast about games that I was going to review. That I shouldn't, if I didn't want him to talk about a game that I had before he did, I shouldn't have taken it to his house and played it with him. But yeah, I played with Quinn's mostly. I played with Matt just once, and also at Games Expo. And obviously never played with Paul because he lives in Canada. So how often? Not that often, maybe like every couple of months. He just sort of doesn't live that near me, and it's a bit tricky, and just it hasn't like matched up. He does kind of a games night once a week, and he invites me, and sometimes I can make it and sometimes I can't. But we've played a bunch of times. Longest, heaviest game that you like? Longest is definitely Game of Thrones 2nd edition. I haven't played it in a while, but that was one of the first games that really grabbed me and fell in love with it, and just showed me how different modern board games can be, and just the scope of them. And it's a beast. The rules, it took us like 3 games or something to get up to speed with it. And the way that we would play it, where we go out of the room and take photos of the board and just really play through the diplomacy aspect of it, that's the stuff I like, and that's what makes it, for us, take like 6.5 hours or something. And then I really like Battlestar Galactica, which is also quite long, especially the way that we play it. But heaviest game in complexity probably is Brewcrafters, because I'm just not really that into sort of medium to heavyweight Euros, and that's the one that I do still like, mostly because of the theme. Have I ever heard of Harbour? Yes, I've heard of Harbour, but I've never played it. Sorry that people are still having trouble. Don't really know what to do about that. I'm quite new to this. What's your go-to for a fun under 30-minute group game? Well, it depends what size. So many of my games are like that. When I Dream is awesome for a good party game. The one that comes into my head is Avenue, which is going to be released as Kokoro. I think I gave these answers before. For Sale, High Society is a fun auction game that's getting re-released from Osprey Games. I wish that I did these Q&As in the room with my games, and then I could look at my games and I could give you some recommendations. I'm just having a look for some games on my list. Under 30 minutes. It's a tricky one. Cockroach Poker, maybe just about under 30 minutes. That's great. Oh, Skull is a great game. Yeah, I'll go with those ones that I've said so far. They're all classics. Yeah, most table presents. Well, yeah, TI3 for that, but I've only played it once. Game of Thrones takes up... Battlestar Galactica takes up a lot of space. Brewcrafters that I just said takes up a lot of space. Merchants and Marauders, that's the table hog. I really like that game. That's pretty heavy and deep. What game started it all for you? Well, I played Catan when I was a lot younger, but I don't think that really got me into it. And then one of my friends, his dad has played board games since the 80s, and he had a whole massive collection. We played Martin Wallace's London, and that for me, it pulled me in like to this world of board games, but ultimately I didn't actually like the game that much. So, but I was sort of really attracted to what board games were offering, this kind of social thing that I hadn't really had since playing the SNES. And so that started it a little bit. And then what really hooked me was Ticket to Ride. And then after that, Carcassonne and Pandemic. those three really. I am going to Spiel. I'm really looking forward to it, otherwise known as Essen. Yeah, super excited. Do I have a favorite designer? Not especially. I really like Matt Leacock, but there are games of his that I don't really care about. And I'm always interested in John Gilmore just because of Vault Wars and Dead of Winter. But I don't think 2 games is enough to be a favorite designer. There's probably designers that have designed more than 2 that I love, but I don't know. I just don't really cling on to a certain designer like some people do. Do you know any of the Dice Tower contributors? I mean, yeah, I've met all 3 of them really. We did a little game together, a kind of wits and wagers game at the UK Games Expo that Tom hosted, and he asked me to be team captain. But I've chatted to Tom the most, and then second most Z, and I haven't really spoken to Sam much other than during that game. But yeah, I mean, Tom's been really friendly and nice, and he says that he watches my videos occasionally, and he's emailed me once or twice. And just when I first met him at last year's expo, or I can't remember, Essen last year, he's just yeah, it was last year's expo. He's just really good to chat to and offer advice, and he's just a really friendly guy. Are you interested in coming to New York City in the near future to meet up and play games? I mean, I would love to go to New York City along with a million other places, but I can't really afford it. And New York City probably wouldn't be on my top list of places to visit, just because I went there not so long ago for my 30th, and I had a great time, but I just, you know, there's like 100 other places to visit as well. So there's that. And how old is Timmy? That is a very good question that I don't really have the answer to. I'm going to deflect that. I don't think it's best to keep that one hazy. Do I go for funding many Kickstarter games? And if you do, what gets you to fund them? I fund a fair few Kickstarter games. Probably, I don't know, more than average, but nowhere near as much as some people. Some people go crazy. Maybe like, I was going to say 1 a month. I don't think I do 1 a month. There seems to be these periods, like in around March and April, there were so many good ones, and I back like 3 in the month. But then I guess some months go past and you back nothing. What gets me to do it? Usually some kind of track record. So I tend to just back all of Tim Fowers' games because I love Burgle Brothers and Paperback and all of his previous games. Artwork can help pull me in, but then I've got to like something about the game. So when there isn't a track record there, I've maybe backed party games or much simpler games because they're easier to understand from just watching a video or reading the rules. When it's a lot bigger and you're spending more money as well, I tend to look for some kind of track record. So pretty much all the bigger games that I've backed recently, they're from either a publisher that I kind of trust or a designer that I've played a game from before. So I backed Dinosaur Island because that was from John Gilmore. I backed Rising Sun because Cool Mini or Not, well, I don't know if they're trustworthy, but they make, you know, I think with Cool Mini or Not games, you can kind of feel like you back it and then you could always just sell it later for roughly the same price. So it's kind of an investment. I did the 7-8 Vikings game because Academy Games, the other games in that line, I've really liked. So it's things like that where with the bigger games, definitely. And then I like to experiment a bit when it's less expensive. So for example, I just backed a party game called Someone Has Died, which is a kind of creativity game about everyone's at a will arbitration. You're trying to fight for who deserves the most of the will. And that just sounds a lot of fun. But it feels like it's harder to get wrong. Maybe I could be wrong there. So I like to, because that's the whole point of Kickstarter is to fund something that wouldn't have existed without it, right? So if you didn't do that, then it is a shame that those bigger ones kind of devalue what was the core principle of Kickstarter, but I'm not that up in arms about it. With how many people do you regularly play with? That kind of varies. I wouldn't say like I have a core group that meet every single week with the same people. So I would say I've sort of got like 15 or so people that I like to game with, and I would invite them round, or we would play at our game group or things like that, that I have on WhatsApp or whatever, maybe slightly less than that. And so I probably regularly play with them, i.e. like I might play with them at least once a month. Have you ever played any of the CCG, LCG type games, or do you have an interest in them? The only one that that's wrong. I've played Netrunner, Android Netrunner, and I've played the Game of Thrones card game, 2nd edition. And Netrunner I quite like as a system. I think it was really cool, the asymmetric thing, the bluffing. I thought that was nice, but I just couldn't. It felt like it was hard to learn, and then hard to teach other people. I don't play that many complex 2-player games, and I didn't want to invest. I don't want these like lifestyle games. So that's why it doesn't really appeal to me, that kind of thing. And then the Game of Thrones card game, I just didn't really like, despite really liking Game of Thrones, because I don't really enjoy just kind of sitting there reading text, and you've got to get into it. You've got to play it 20-something times until you're really kind of, you've really got it down and you're just playing it, you know, all the cards. And I don't have the patience for that. And I also felt like the theme didn't come through in the gameplay. There's all the cards are named and all the artwork's wonderful, but it didn't feel like I was in Game of Thrones not for a second. I like about 230 of Ranikinitz's games, but I'm waiting for 250 to call him a favorite. Nice. Do you have a favorite style of game, area control, co-op, deck builder, party game, etc.? Not really. I would say, I mean, I more and more I find that party games are like this pure entertainment that it's so much. Sometimes I find it's so much harder to have a bad time with a party game because it brings people together. I love that interaction. It's simple and usually makes you laugh if it's a good one. So maybe I would lean towards that. But I do really like cooperative games with the storytelling element. So if I was to go on the other side of things, the longer side of things, I definitely love negotiation games. So Game of Thrones, New Angeles, Spartacus, Sons of Anarchy, Nothing Personal. All of those are like some of my favorite games. So negotiation games. And I do like cooperative games, but I find it hard to find good people to play them with sometimes. And then I like games with a rich storytelling aspect. Not all of them, but things like Time Stories, This War of Mine. I like that kind of stuff. Any favorite video games? Do you still play video games? Yes, I still play video games occasionally, not as much as I used to. Favorite video games of all time would be the Mass Effect trilogy, just because of the story aspect. Don't care about the combat at all, just the decisions and all the relationships and stuff. And I like the messages, the kind of greater arc to it all. I really like that. Uncharted, just because of the great acting and again the story aspect. And it was a good sort of action adventure game. I played FIFA more than any other game out there by like 100 times over. Oblivion, I really loved. There are loads, but not. I don't play it sort of religiously. But there have been times where I would get really into a game. Life is Strange is another game that I really loved. Read any good books recently? Not really. I am ashamed to say that I don't read books as often as I would like. I'm trying to think of the last good book I read. I was reading a book called, oh man, I'm going to look up my Kindle thing and tell you, and it's going to, am I going to do that? Oh, wait, let me in. Okay, I'm giving up on that immediately. Oh, I do have my phone. I'm going to look on my phone. Yeah, so I was reading Treasure Island. I was trying to read that, but I don't know. I wasn't really feeling it. I tend to give up on books quite easily. So, yeah, there aren't many that have grabbed me and kept me there. So oh yeah, The Elements of Eloquence is a non-fiction book about writing and stuff. I find it really interesting. The guy's written 2 other books, and they were both really great about the kind of history of words. One's called the Etymologicon. So I find it, yeah, really, really hard to find books that I like. One book, I'm just going to pick out a book that I really loved. It's called How I Became a Famous Novelist. And it's a really funny book. It's by a guy called Steve Healy, H-E-L-Y. And I came across it from Script Notes, a podcast that I used to listen to about writing screenplays. And they just recommended it. And I read it. And it was one of the best books I've ever read, just because it was hilariously funny. And the guy's written for 30 Rock and stuff. So it kind of makes sense I would like it. I would love to find more books like that. I try books and give up. I find some books are so... I find that I have so little patience for cheesy writing in books, and that I just come across that too often. Pretentiousness as well in books. Wow. Are you going to any other UK conventions next year besides the Expo? Not planning to currently, but I probably should. I probably need to get to some other ones, but we'll see how things go. It's just train prices and hotel prices, but you know, they're fun. So I suppose why not? You mentioned Rising Suns. Do you like Eric Lang games? Godfather, Blood Rage, Secrets, Bloodborne. I don't especially like Eric Lang games, or at least the ones that I've played. I played The Godfather. It's just not really my kind of game. I found it to be too thinky. I didn't find that the theme really came through that much. I wouldn't say it was bad in any respect. I just found it was a bit meh, but I only played it once. Blood Rage, I've also only played once. I would prefer Blood Rage. I didn't mind it that much. Again, I felt like there is no theme to what you're doing in the game. It's very mechanical, but obviously the artwork and the miniatures are amazing, but that isn't what I look for in that kind of game. But again, I didn't hate it. I would probably play it again. I don't own it, so I'm sort of less inclined to play it again. Secrets, I've played a few times, and I don't think I really like that one at all. It wasn't really working for anyone at the table. That you struggle to keep track of what's going on. You don't really feel like you have any useful information. You don't really know how to bluff to best. Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed a bit like it didn't work for us. And I haven't played Bloodborne. As for other Eric Lang games, I did review The Others, which was from him, and I didn't mind that one, but I also had some issues with it, and I ultimately didn't keep it. I'm not sure if I played many of his other games. Do you plan any videos about solo or solo games? I'm afraid not. I just don't play solo games, so I would be useless to talk about that. Hello to my #1 Italian fan. I do recognize your name. What is the worst game you have ever played? Oh, that is tricky. I've played some pretty bad games. Ah, man. I'm going to check my ratings for that one, because that's... I should know one off by heart. I think like nothing nothing that anyone would know what it was. And it could be just a game that really didn't click with me. Okay, I haven't really rated that many games that badly. I played The Great Dalmuti at UK Games Expo, and I hated it. I don't know if we were playing it wrong though, and I wasn't teaching it, so yeah. Okay, sorry. Have I tried Pixel Tactics? I have not. Which game expansions do you keep integrated even when teaching the game to first-timers, and which expansions do you avoid playing with? Yeah, that's the frustrating thing with expansions. I probably would generally avoid most of them. But it depends, because sometimes I just really want to play with them, and so it's worth just adding on that extra 5 minutes of teaching. So Celestia, the Little Help expansion, I've definitely played with that and kept the expansion in. What else? Pandemic, like you would just throw in some roles. I would probably play with in the lab, but it depends. If I'm teaching newbies for the first time, then that sort of is a different thing entirely. Things like Spartacus, I would leave in the expansions for the extra cards. I don't know if Cash and Guns, I would definitely play with the expansions for Cash and Guns, because I just think I much prefer the game with it. I was just looking through some of my other expansions. There are definitely some that it just depends. It kind of depends who I'm playing with. If it was newbies to gaming, then that creates a different problem. If it's just newbies to that particular game, then I kind of think, you know, and they play board games, then I'm willing to push it usually, because if I feel like the game is much better. My friends mostly play the famous modern board games like Catan and Pandemic. What's the best way to move from that onto more obscure and complex games? I don't know. I guess you just got to try stuff, but you're looking for games that you want the middle ground or slightly more obscure stuff. I would really recommend Stockpile as a game. I'm not saying it's any more complicated than those games, but it's just a game that I really like. And I think it's just kind of a bit different and not necessarily what you'd expect. I would say Lords of Vegas could be a good step up, although don't expect nice artwork. And I don't know. I think there are games out there that are more a step up, and I have tended not to be that fussed about trying them, because as you start to develop the understanding of what you like, for example, I mean, I'm sure I would like Stone Age. It sounds like a fun game, but I'm not like racing to play it. Champions of Midgard might be one to try. I think that's really easy to pick up, but it's different to the ones you're describing. So I guess you just got to find those ones that are, that's probably not very helpful. Where do I play usually? I was in London a couple of weeks ago. I went to Drafts and a nice pub in Dalston, but I can't recall the name. You probably went to Loading Bar if you're talking about like a pub in Dalston that plays games. I play usually at London on Board, which is a meetup that meets up in various different pubs in the centre of London. So it's just random different pubs. They're not board gaming pubs, but we tend to have like their function room and we play in there. But I occasionally play at Drafts, but it's really hard to get a table on the busy night. So that I wish they would open up another one, or I wish someone would open up a rival board gaming thing. Do you have any games you love, but you keep leaving on the shelf for something else and feel really bad about it? Yeah, I mean, there are loads of games that that I just never get to play. And so many of them are negotiation games, because I just think to have a good time with them, often something like New Angele's Game of Thrones, that you want 6 players maybe, or 5 players, and then you want 5 or 6 players that are going to get into that spirit of negotiation, and then also be willing to not be back, to be sort of betrayed or whatever, and they're not going to get upset about it. So certainly those are the games, the longer ones, like Battlestar Galactica. I love that game. But also as a reviewer, there's always something new to be playing so that I can review it. And so I don't get to go back to the older games as much as I like, which is a shame. But so yeah, there's half of my collection of games that I feel bad about, I suppose. A controversial question. What do you think is the number of plays a reviewer should play a game before doing a review? And do you agree that we live in a time of first impressions? I don't know. I don't really have a solid answer on that. I think that every reviewer, and this, I've spoken to other people, I think that everyone knows when they have an understanding of the game they want to talk about. So if you play a really simple game, I 100% believe that you can play a game once and know what you want to say about it. Now, it depends how in-depth your review is going. I don't personally do sort of 10, 15-minute long reviews that are tearing it apart. But generally, I mean, I don't think I've ever reviewed a game after one play. But what I have found is that I'll play a game once and know exactly what I think about it. but then I'll force myself to play it a bunch more times, and I still come out with the same conclusion. It hasn't changed because, and I felt like I should have trusted my instincts, but I didn't. I continued to play it because I wanted to be an ethical reviewer. I wanted to maintain some level of credibility or whatever, and it didn't change anything. And I think I think it's slightly naive to think that you have to play some games a certain number of times to understand what you want to say about it, because ultimately, I would not say that I'm the definitive answer. When I cover a game, I don't think you shouldn't watch anyone else's review. You can't have your own thoughts. You shouldn't play it yourself and try it for yourself. I'm just giving my thoughts, and usually it just, you play it a number of times and you feel that you know what you want to say about it. Now, but I generally don't play the more complex Euro games that would probably benefit from many plays. And I also think it depends what you're saying about a game, because for me, when I watch a review, I tend to skip, I wouldn't say skip a lot of it, but I zone out because I want to know what is the feeling from the game, what is that experience it creates. And I'm not as interested to learn that maybe one strategy is slightly wonky, or if you play it 10 times, you'll find out that the Lannisters in Game of Thrones is the weakest thing. That doesn't matter to me, because I played Game of Thrones a whole bunch of times, and yeah, the Lannisters the weakest. You might not want to play them, but someone has to. You still have an amazing time. It's still a great experience. And so for me, I'm reviewing the experience. I tend not to delve into, is this game 100% balanced and things like that. And if reviewers do go into that area, then I suppose that is where it's more in their interest to play it many times, and then that allows them to have that critical take on it. Do I agree that we live in a time of first impressions? I don't know. I think people are potentially just putting too much. You are creating your own definition of what the word review means, and so I think it's a bit cheap to say that one person's is a valid review because they've done this and someone else is invalid. Like I think the only thing, I think generally, if you were to go through and play every single game once and then immediately review it, I feel like it would show. And I think possibly there have been instances, I don't know of any examples, but where people would watch a review and they sort of feel like, well, he's only played it once because it feels like there's not an understanding there. And if that's the case, well, then I suppose you watch someone else. But I don't know. I feel like I'm coming across as defensive there, and for me, I think there isn't a black and white answer to it, and I think to think that there should be is an oversimplification of it. I also think it's slightly just, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. What's one theme you'd love to see implemented into a board game? I would love to see The Wire, the TV show The Wire. I would love some kind of asymmetrical game where one person plays as the detectives, one person plays as one drug gang, another person plays as another drug gang, and you're having to work with each other. Maybe some person's Omar, and you're having to, the detectives occasionally having to work with the bad guys to help them catch other bad guys, things like that. I have no idea how it would work, but I think that would be an amazing theme. I also thought a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective game with a Veronica Mars theme. Really just any TV show that I love. So ER would be another one. I'd love to see more medically themed games. And definitely stuff about life, about humanity. So Pursuit of Happiness is a game that I really love, and I'm really excited about Fog of Love. I would like to see other games going into those types of themes, exploring stuff that board games are generally not exploring. Any good strategies, recommendations on teaching games on game night? There's a crazy balance between let's go and let me read you every instruction. Yeah, I wish I had a great answer to this. Obviously, it pays to have read the rulebook in advance and maybe watch it played video and things like that. But I don't have any wonderful tips. I do think definitely, I think Rado said some good stuff about this. You definitely need to start with what's the game about? Why? What's the world? Like, give them a reason to understand everything that you're just about to say. I've had way too many times, I've had teachers, like they will teach you the mechanics. And for me, a big part of a game is its theme. But not only that, that it's so much easier sometimes to understand mechanisms when you understand the rationale behind them, because sometimes they work logically. I can't think of a great example right now, but for example, in Sons of Anarchy, there's these nice rules where you can't have more guns in a fight than you have people in that fight. And there's just a certain understanding that you need to know that it's a gang, it's a motorcycle gang thing going on. And if you just jump straight to the mechanisms, it ruins it. So definitely start with where they are and how they win the game, which I often forget to do. And then the other tip that Rado insists on is, if somebody asks you a question, stop and answer that question, because if you don't, they are not going to stop thinking about that and they're just going to zone you out. But I do think try to get to that first round as soon as possible. Now, and I've found that it depends on the players you're teaching, because some people love to know everything, because on that first turn, if they don't know everything, they might make a wrong move. Whereas I personally don't care if I make a wrong move for the first 10 moves. I just want to start playing and I learn as I go. But so it really depends who you're playing with. Worst I've played has been Nevermind the Buzzcocks. Yeah, I haven't played that board game. What are your favorite game themes? Definitely medical themes, which I don't feel has been like, I don't have a game, I don't think currently that has that theme and I think has nailed it. I've played a couple that have done sort of average jobs. So that's one. Anything based on a TV show that I love. As I was saying before, anything about life or romance or just kind of a more deep sort of personal aspect, a take on things. It's a terrible way of describing it. And TV, I think so the networks was a cool theme, because but I don't feel like there's loads of depth to that. I don't think you could have like 10 games about TV. I like stuff that's, I could tell you exactly what I love in themes is a real world theme that I could, so I'm not fussed about fantasy or sci-fi unless it's got a real realism to it, like a realistic sci-fi. Maybe something set like not far in the future. So some kind of Black Mirror dystopian thing would be cool. But really just real world settings. So Flashpoint Fire Rescue, I like that theme, medical stuff, Robinson Crusoe, all those kind of things. And really that spans a lot of stuff, but yet not that many people are making games like that, I would say. I just see everything's fantasy and sci-fi. What are your favorite house rules that you use and for which games? I don't know that I use that many house rules. I don't know. I honestly can't think. I tried the very simple rule that people have with Carcassonne, where you pick up the tile at the end of your turn so you can be thinking about it. I've tried that, but I've only done that sort of a few times recently. And I think that works great. I tend to stick to the rules. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably, I've definitely adapted a lot of party games. Kind of on the fly. I couldn't tell you one right now, but some just feel like they're a bit wonky in the way they count the points, or they just make it overly convoluted when really you just want to be focusing on the fun of the game. So I suppose in Telestrations, when you just don't count points anymore, that's in a way a house rule. Which Cache of Guns expansion do you prefer? I think I'm not offhand. I might struggle to remember which one is which. Oh no, actually, no. I like the one that brings in teams. Definitely the team one. But I've actually reviewed both of them. So if you type in Actualol Cache and Guns, you should find them, and I'll go into more detail. Who is your favorite character to dress up as, other than Timmy, of course? Well, in terms of dressing up, it depends. I mean, I would probably like the characters that require the least dressing up, because it gets so hot when you're having to wear, like, Barry is like a wig, which is really hot, and then a shirt and a jumper. And you've got the camera lights on. It's, yeah, so I don't tend to love that. But in terms of the ones that I like to play, I don't know. I have only done it once. I think the cheerleader in the zombie video was like just ridiculous. So that was kind of fun, and doing like that stupid accent. But that is not necessarily my favorite. I think the ones with the more interesting outfits, the ones where it feels like I've managed to pull together like quite a believable outfit from just what's in our wardrobe. Sherlock, that was fun. Oh, the hipster, yeah. I like doing the hipster because that was just all kind of stuff that I pulled in, but it kind of just works. Like it's instantly recognizable. So yeah, I think, yeah, the hipster's a good one. Do you play many dueling games? I don't think I do. I don't fully know what that means exactly, but if you mean like Mage Wars and other ones like that, I don't know if that's what you mean. I've never played that. Do you like any legacy games? Have you looked into Charterstone? If so, what do you think? Yeah, I really like Risk Legacy, which I played with a group of friends. We went away to Yorkshire. My dad lives in Yorkshire and he was out of the house, and so we have gone up there a few times over the summer, and we played Risk Legacy there. There's 5 of us, but we never see each other because they don't all live in London, and so we've only played maybe 5 games of that, but it's really good fun. You've got to kind of deal with the dice rolling and stuff, but it's a fun experience and adventure, and yeah, I really like that. And then Pandemic Legacy I really like as well, but we haven't got to the end of that. I found that we played it 2 players with only 2 characters, and it was too easy, and then we eventually introduced, like, we started playing it with 4 characters, which screwed with the balance a bit. So it's good, but I would say don't play it with 2 players and 2 characters. And then I've also found that the admin of legacy games, every time you've got to set it up, it requires way more setup than your average Pandemic game. And I still love normal Pandemic. So that kind of means I'm less inclined to play it. And I'm actually getting a copy of Charterstone. So I think the artwork looks amazing. I haven't really looked any more into it other than that. I mean, I know the general theme, which is you're building up a village. I like to kind of like watching a film. I think it's best to not watch the trailer. So I know that I'm going to be playing it. So I'm just going to go in blind and have the most kind of fresh experience or whatever. Can I settle a debate, please? King of Tokyo or King of New York? Well, this is going to be terrible, but I've never actually played King of Tokyo, and I've played King of New York once, and I don't even think my friend taught the rules. I don't think he necessarily taught the rules right. So I can't settle that debate at all. I'm sorry. Do you listen to any board game podcasts? Yeah, I used to listen to the Dice Tower all the time, and then I just haven't had the time lately. So I'm really behind. But generally, yeah, the Dice Tower podcast, just because it's just I think they're Eric and Tom are great together, and I liked a lot of their features, like the tales and stuff, and all the top 10s. But the reason I tend to watch a lot of the Dice Tower as well is just because they're covering the games before everyone else. So if I want to hear about a new game, if I'm going to hear about it first on the Dice Tower, and I also think it's a really well-produced podcast. In terms of other stuff, well, I should give a shout out to Last Place, which is Efka and John Gets Games podcast that I guested on for their 10th episode. And then, yeah, I've got loads on my podcast thing, but I haven't, I for whatever reason, like making videos, it kind of takes a lot of time away from playing games and being involved with games. And I tend to watch more videos. So for example, like I've enjoyed the Geek All Stars when I've listened to them. I used to listen to the Plaid Hat podcast, but I haven't honestly listened to that in a long time. Shut Up and Sit Down. Yeah, I really like their podcast. Cardboard Cast with Rich Summer. Oh, Rado, I like his podcast. They're really long, but I like his section where he talks about new games, because again, that really introduces me to stuff, and all his convention ones where he talks about all his big long lists. We tend not to like that many games overlapping in the sense, but it really kind of, I learn a lot from that. So those are a few, but I've definitely listened to loads of others. I'm just, I guess, not much of a podcaster. Will Catan or Pandemic ever become outdated in the way Monopoly has? Yeah, I mean, I would imagine so. I don't know where games are going to end up in another 50 years. Well, Monopoly's even older than that. But I think Catan is already like a little bit outdated in the sense that it's quite luck heavy. And I suppose it's not outdated for a really simple gateway game. But I think there are more interesting games that have come out sort of 20 years on. And I don't know. I assume it has to happen. I can't really imagine how it would happen, because I feel like in the last 20 years they've focused so heavily on balance and sort of a nice tight game length and gameplay arc and all these things that make Pandemic and Catan like wonderful games. I'm not really sure what they'll do in another 50 years to make it even better, and I wonder whether it will just be making them, bringing an extra dimension, whether it's with some kind of technology side of things. I really don't know, but I suppose I just sort of assume it's inevitable, but maybe it isn't. Maybe Pandemic will last in the way that chess has lasted. I don't know. Have I seen or listened to the new Board Game Panel Show podcast, This Game is Broken? I've heard about it. I haven't listened to it yet, just because don't listen to that many podcasts. But it sounds really great. It's got a whole bunch of like funny guys, like the two brothers that are on, the Murph brothers that are on the Dice Tower. They're really funny. And Dave Luz is a great guy. And the other two British guys, oh my God, their names, Dan, and the other one, I definitely know his name. He's from the bit at the end of, oh, sorry, I'm completely blanking. But yeah, so it's a really great cast. Actually, Dan told me about the idea at UK Games Expo, and it sounded really great. And I kind of wish I was involved, because I like that idea, but I sort of feel like a traditional TV panel show is a lot of work in terms of writing jokes and stuff. So I don't know how it would work on a podcast, but I could imagine if I was trying to do it, it would just be a lot of hard work. But I wish them the best, and like they're really funny guys, so I'm sure it's great. What is your default color in a game? I always go for yellow regardless of the game. I don't really have one, and yeah, I really don't care. But generally, other people pick before me. If someone's forcing me to pick, I'd probably go blue. I quite like purple. I sometimes go green. That's all I got really. Do you like bidding and auction games, Ra, Isle of Skye, Modern Art? Yeah, I do like bidding auction games. I've never played Isle of Skye or Ra. I need to play Ra. It's like a classic, right? And I need to play Isle of Skye. I played Modern Art once, and I didn't really like it. I found it very hard to know what to bid. I think we were all new to it, and we all were a bit lost, and we're all sort of overbidding. And I think the way that the values changed based on how much had been auctioned, it just threw us a bit. But I really like High Society. It's a very simple bidding game. Stockpile's got bidding in it. For Sale, I mean, these are quite simple ones. There's bound to be ones with more in. I mean, blind bidding is not amazing, but I like the blind bidding auction in Spartacus and in Game of Thrones. I think it adds like a real tension to those games. There's definitely some others that I'm not thinking of. Have you ever heard of the band Papa? And then it cuts off. So I'm afraid I haven't. But I don't think I've heard of any band starting with Papa. So oh, sorry. I was trying to ask. Oh, I see. Right. I was trying to ask. Yeah. So he was asking about the first impressions thing, and whether games are being designed as optimized for best starting experience while that shine fading with more pace. that is entirely possible. And I suppose if you were being cynical as a board game designer / publisher, yeah, certainly you need games to pop in that first couple of plays. And that's not just for reviewers, that's just for everyone, because there's so many games to compete with. And it's kind of like making a TV show. If you don't make that pilot amazing and bringing everyone in, so many people are going to give up, and they're just going to watch something else because there's too many good options. Whether that means that they're not optimized to, well, sorry, whether the shine then fades, I suppose nobody's going to plan for that. But I suppose it's possible, and maybe there is some balance there where you try and make it all amazing up front, and then there's no length, or there's no longevity. That's possible. And certainly, I don't know, as someone that I always like to play variety, and I tend to, there aren't that many games for me that I've played sort of 20, 30 times. And so I'm potentially partially responsible for that. But I think, unfortunately, that's the sort of the nature of the consumerist society that we're in. And I can see that being an issue, but I wouldn't say I've necessarily noticed it, but I possibly wouldn't be the person. Favorite artist, band. I don't really have a favorite of all time. I tried to write some down that I really like, because I figured I might get asked. Let's say Fleetwood Mac. They're really, like, they're classic. They're not going anywhere. I went through my Spotify. I'll just pick those out because I still listen to them a lot. And whereas other things, you sort of go through phases and stuff. Question is stealing from the Shut Up and Sit Down podcast. What is the first concept you would teach young game designers? Wow. That is tricky. Honestly, I don't know. I bet they had a great answer for this. The first concept. I'm lost. Yeah, I've not got a good answer for that. I'm really sorry. Have I played Flatline? Yes, I have played Flatline a whole bunch of times, and it's fun. It's really hectic. Is what you'd expect. It's stressful, and you're under real pressure. I just don't know if I 100% love it enough to keep it and keep playing it. It's really hard. There's stuff to think about. I don't love that the discussion is in the downtime between the real-time elements, because what I like about real-time games ideally is having to be forced into making quick decisions, whereas in Flatline you can really think about the bigger decisions and then pretty much plan the whole round and then just hope that the dice come up right. And there is definitely some shouting at each other, and you definitely make mistakes under pressure, but I just don't think there's enough there for me long term. Yeah, I got the moon poster up on the wall because, yeah, the other day it was still on the floor. And Sam Rockwell was so good in Moon. Yeah, it's an amazing film. Why do I love the movie Moon? And I just assume that you do love it. And what are your other favorite sci-fi movies, books, shows? I love the movie Moon because I love that side of sci-fi that makes you think. So it's about existence and what it means to be human and identity, and yeah, and it's also just, it's heartbreaking, and it's really emotional film. What I love about certain sci-fi films is using those settings to not have aliens attacking and some boring war and all that stuff, which I'm not into, but it's about coming away and having sort of coming away from the movie with, like, you're really thinking about it afterwards. And so definitely another film that is in that vein is Arrival. Love Arrival. And I mean, just basically what I just said, but the same. And Ex Machina is another film that probably not as good as those two, but that's definitely up there. So it's those kind of sci-fi, and there's probably like one or two others. Snowpiercer is a cool sci-fi film that feels a bit like that. That's has got a bit of a message to it, like this. So yeah, and maybe some Black Mirror episodes. And then in terms of sci-fi books, I don't know if there's any that I've read that I've really loved. And then shows, probably just Battlestar Galactica, because again, I mean, Battlestar Galactica is a lot more camp and showy, and there is explosions and fights and stuff. But the general the main conceit of Cylons and they're living among us and the spies and what it was saying about terrorism and stuff like that. Yeah, that's what engaged me to the show, and it also was ultimately like great characters, and so yeah, I enjoyed Battlestar Galactica. It was a bit ropey in places, but yeah, generally loved it. Hey John, I recently moved to the UK, Manchester, and while I've brought over my favorite board games, I'm having trouble finding people to play with. How do you find a board gaming group here? Yeah, I totally get that. And when I first started playing, I was mostly playing with like my old friends, and it was a case of like most of them didn't live in London anymore, and we're having to invite them up for the weekend, and I wouldn't get to play games that much. So yeah, I just started going. I looked on meetup.com and I found a group in London, and I just started going. And it isn't necessarily that smooth when you first start going, and certainly in London there are thousands of people, and you're going to play with all sorts of people and all sorts of games, and not necessarily find people that you click with, but eventually over time you have really good experiences, and I've made some great friends. And so hopefully in Manchester, hopefully near where you are, there's, I mean, I would have thought, right, it's Manchester, you're going to get some meetup groups. So good luck, I would say. Zombie cheerleader, yes. What do I do with the board games I get rid of? Do I trade them? Not really. I used to trade games. I just find the whole trading thing a nightmare, trying to find people that want the game that you have and you want the game that they have. And I know Board Game Geek helps with that a bit, but it's just hard work. And so many people, like, you'll offer them a trade and it seems like the same value and they still reject you. And then, of course, you're still spending the postage. So I prefer to just sell games and then use that money to buy new games. There's a Facebook group in the UK where I sell a lot of games, and then some I give away to friends because I know that they like it more than I do and stuff. But it's generally, yeah, sell them. Any plans to try out some role-playing games? Yeah, I mean, I would love to try out more role-playing games. And I've played a few like indie RPGs in the past. It's just a time thing, and also finding a group, because again, I feel like you need the right group. And we played The End of the World, the Fantasy Flight, the zombie one. And that was all right, but we ultimately didn't finish it. And I've been meaning to play some role-playing games with Efka from No Pun Included and Elaine, because they I think have a role-playing game group, or they did, and they've got a bunch of games like Tales from the Loop and what's the other one? Oh, I want to play 10 Candles, like all the games that Cynthia reviews on Shut Up and Sit Down, and like she raves about them. I want to try all of those, and then some of the ones in the past, like that one shot the Shut Up and Sit Down reviewed, where you're in a car and you've just escaped from a heist, and it's from the guy that made Fiasco. There's so many games, and I've bought many role-playing games. Like, I've kickstarted them and I've never played them. The one, Primetime Adventures, where you make your own TV series, that's just so up my street, and it's just a time thing and organizing it and stuff. So I'd love to, but no immediate plans. Maybe an immediate plan to play like 10 Candles. Is it 10 Candles? 12 Candles? Thank you, William. Thank you. If board games are your job, what do you do to have fun, relax, to escape the board game bubble? Yeah, that's a bit of an issue, but I find I don't always find board games to be like a. I don't find it to be stressful because I'm making reviews now and stuff. It depends on the game. Like sometimes you like, oh, I've got to play that game again, and I didn't especially like it the first time, but I've got to play it again because I've got to review it and stuff. And I'm hoping to be able to move away from that and focus on, you know, only make videos about the games that I have something important to say about, rather than just reviewing games for the sake of it. But apart from that, I love going out to eat with my girlfriend and with friends, and just drinks, watching TV, browsing the internet. There isn't that much outside of those few things. So just it's just sort of yeah, that's about it. Everyone's chatting about Huddersfield. Oh yeah, and you've got Dan Hughes. Have you played any mega games? Yeah, I've played maybe 6 mega games, something like that. I've played 2 maybe 3. 2, 3. Yeah, 3 Watch the Skies mega games as a scientist and a diplomat and a weird amphibious character. And then I played a really cool gangster, like 1920s with superheroes called City of Shadows. That was one of my favorites. And then I played a Washington Conference, which is quite diplomatic and very political. And then I played the zombie one, the big one that was kind of global, and had hundreds of people in it. I know, like 500 or something, and there was people in America and Australia, I think, playing it, and all in Europe and stuff. And then very recently played another alien one. I've forgotten what it's called, but it was on Mars, something about Mars. So yeah, great fun. I was playing that before I was making videos, and now I feel like my life is in making videos, which just sounds a bit sad, but mega games are kind of there's a whole community, and I think like you get the most out of it if you kind of get really into it and you get to know people, and you play with the people you like in your group, and you really read up on the games. And when I first did it, I was sort of in love with it, and we played as Brazil, and we bought like Brazil t-shirts and flags and things like that. And there's such a sort of there's such an atmosphere that you create for yourself, and it makes it so much more immersive. And whereas these days I've been a bit lazier with it, and ultimately you don't get as good an experience out of it. Pitch a movie based on an original modern board game. Ah, man, I mean, the obvious one is Pandemic, but that's just Contagion, right? And then I'm thinking Dead of Winter, but there's like a million other zombie films. I think Dead of Winter has got a really perfect film theme. I'm looking through my list again. I got nothing. Yeah, I think Dead of Winter would be really cool. You've got a traitor, you've got the whole, you've got a slightly different take on zombies because it's in a winter apocalypse. I don't know how many times that's been done, but not like by a huge Hollywood film. What's your opinion on app integration in games? I generally, I don't mind it. If it's really useful, then I think it's great. So I played Alchemists, and it's a really cool use of an app. And so, yeah, totally. Love that. And then there are other games that sort of use them, and it's not that important. And then you sort of think, oh, and I don't care about the whole, oh, the app will die and all that stuff. Like I'm not that worried about things like that. But I've started to realize that if you've got 20 games with apps, then you've got 20 apps on your phone, or at least you've got to reinstall it every time you play it. And so that is started to bug me a little bit. So it's got to be worthwhile. It's got to be really using the technology, I think. I'm trying to think of another good example of one that I really like, and I'm struggling. I need to try World of Yoho. That looks really cool. You get to play Death for Your Soul. Which game would you pick? I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. Do you think there's any cases in which player death, player elimination are an interesting, fun mechanic? Yeah, I do. I think like some people jumped on me in my Monopoly video because I said that player elimination was dead, and it's obviously not dead. There are some games in it that it's still around, and I think it doesn't matter nearly as much if the game's short or if it kind of, maybe if it works in the context, but I think ultimately the game has to be short. So I think in Escape from Aliens in Outer Space, you can get eliminated if you're an alien and another alien kills you. And I think that's good because it puts a real jeopardy. Don't kill another alien. It means that you have to be sure that someone's a human before you kill them. And it also, it works within the theme. So yeah, I like that. But it can be annoying. I definitely had it where somebody got killed because there was a couple of newbies and they didn't fully get how big that would be. And then they were out of the game for the next like 40 minutes or something. So it can also be a downside, and I can see why people wouldn't like it. And then I think just like simpler games, I'm trying to think of a good one. Like in Bang the Dice game, I don't mind it, but I'm not I've kind of gone off that game. So in something like a hidden traitor game that's quite short, I don't think it's the end of the world. But I think you'd have to give me some examples of, well, I suppose I'm supposed to be giving me examples. But yeah, it generally would have to be just a short thing. And in terms of it being a fun mechanic, I don't think that it necessarily adds a whole lot, but I think sometimes it just kind of, it is important to give you enough jeopardy so that your decisions mean something, or otherwise, if everyone can just come back to life like you do in Battlestar Galactica or whatever, then people are just killing everyone willy-nilly, and what's the point? Like, it doesn't, I think it brings some gravitas to it. Best game that you use as a drinking game, what rules do you use? Also possible video topic. Yeah, I actually put that as one of the stretch goals that people could vote on. And yeah, I would love to do a top 10 drinking games video. I just think it'd be a lot of fun to make. And I've recently been playing, I kind of got the whole of there's a whole series of games, the most famous of which is Cockroach Poker. And then you've got Cheating Moth and, oh man, there's Tarantula Tango and Dodolido. And these are all these little card games, mostly from the same designer, the name of which is I can't remember at the moment, but they are all really good drinking games because especially Tarantula Tango and Dodolido, because you're going around a circle, everyone's having to follow some certain rules when a card is played. So in Tarantula Tango, you're having to make animal noises, but then you can add in all these extra rules to make it more complicated. So you're way more likely to mess up. It's the same guy that made Ghost Splits, in fact. And it's just so easy to get wrong, and then you restart. And so it has those regular intervals for people to drink, and it's where they've made a mistake. So it just fits perfectly. So absolutely, those would be my favorite. But there's also some others, and that's why I really would like to make a video about it. Aliens have come to Earth, and you need to explain them what board games are and why people like them. Bonus points if you can get them to play. Wow. Wow, you asked the hard questions. Aliens have got... I mean, assuming that they can understand what on earth I'm saying, I think why not just pretend that board games are vital for interspecies or interterrestrial, whatever the phrase is, communication. And so we can, as board gamers, if, for example, the scientists that are dealing with the aliens, if they like board games, they can use that as an opportunity to make it vital to communication, and then we all get to play board games. There's a cop-out answer. What two-player games are you enjoying at the moment? I don't know if I've played that many straight two-player games that recently. I think it's been a while. Like, I think it's been a while since like a really good, I mean, not like when I say a while, like I'm talking like 4 months or something. So not that long, but it's been a while since I played like a really good two-player game. And I mostly covered them in the last couples video that I did. So Santorini and Fugitive, they were some like, and Sagrada and stuff, although it's not two-player only. And so we played Azul recently, which is coming out from Plan B Games. It's really pretty, and that worked nice at two-player. I don't know if it's like, I don't know if I love it. I'm going to talk about it more in a video, but I think it's a really cool game. I just don't think it's up there. Like when you're having to beat like Onitama and like, well, there's some two-player games that we really love, and so but yeah, not so many other two-player games lately. What makes you angry with players in a game? Someone got greasy fingers on my Sushi Go cards about a year ago, and I still haven't forgiven them. Yeah, I get that. Well, that's partly why I generally sleeve card games. What makes me angry? Loads of stuff. People that there's just definitely people in co-op games that tell everyone what to do and really forceful. That's the worst. I mean, I made a whole video about it, the Pandemic song. And people that there are maybe some people that just are constantly asking questions about the tiniest rules, like different, like the intricacies that they don't even need to know right now, but it sort of popped into their head as what could be a question later on, so they have to ask it now. And it's like, we're just trying to play the game, and especially if the game's quite simple. But certainly people that maybe don't like greasy fingers, I mean, I don't see it to be like a huge problem, but it's not ideal. And I suppose people that just take forever on their turn, it's antisocial, because ultimately, like, we're all there I'm there to play a game with you, and if you are taking twice as long as everyone else, then in a way you're saying that your time is more valuable whilst everyone else is just waiting for you. So I know people don't do it on purpose, and it's a certain type of brain and things, and I've definitely been that person sometimes, but I've tried to get a lot better at it, because when you're on the receiving end, it's just soul destroying. And Arrival was excellent. Thank you, Quinn. Do you have a favorite solo board game from 2017? Do you enjoy solo deck building games? I'm afraid, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm surprised, but there are a lot of people out there that love solo games, and great. I'm afraid I just don't, it's not something that really interests me, because the reason I got into board games is because I want the social aspect. And so that's like, I just don't play solo games. Has a date been set for the ascendancy of our grand overlord, Timmy? No, I mean, he's got to grow up a bit first. And I think, it's going to be a while. We kind of need board games to take over the world first. And so in conjunction with that, board game YouTube channels will take over. And then board game YouTube channel characters. So, and which I would assume that Timmy is like the biggest board game YouTube channel character, only because no other board game YouTube channels have characters. So he's winning. How would you convince people that think board games are lame to play? What games would you use? Yeah, I was actually going to do a video about this. I mean, I don't think it's, I think for some people they're unfortunately like a lost cause. I don't think I've really encountered that too much myself, because I think that people that have that attitude to board games probably have that attitude to a lot of things, and they're probably quite closed-minded and sort of annoying to deal with. So I think some people are, you just got to give up on. But I would say it's all about confounding their expectations. So what do people expect board games to be about? So they expect there to be cards and dice and what they know, Monopoly and Scrabble and Cluedo. And so you have to give them games that are completely different to those. And I'm definitely going to do a video about this at some point, but think about games that just do something that they wouldn't expect. So Captain Sonar, it's a team versus team game. You're playing all at once. You're using whiteboards. There's no dice, there's no cards, there's no board really. And it's so interactive and different and interesting and sort of energetic. I would say generally say energetic games. I think there are some people out there that are destined to love Euro games and strategy games. But I feel like those aren't the same people that you need to win over in the same way, because they're probably a bit more easier to get into just a standard board game. I would say Mask of Moai or Mask of Anubis, which are these Japanese games that use a virtual reality headset. They are really cool because it's using a really cool technological aspect, and it's really cooperative. I personally really love Mysterium for that kind of thing because it's different, because you're communicating with artwork and you're playing again cooperatively. And but as I found out on my comments, not everyone agrees on Mysterium. So Fake Artist Goes to New York, I think that one, because it's so simple and it immediately gets you into being a hidden traitor, but it's a bit like Pictionary, but also completely different. Yeah, I think there are some cool games. I would generally lean towards, if it's someone that is hard to please, you've got to keep the game short. It's got to be simple because they're going to start groaning. Two Rooms and a Boom is possibly another one that's quite a tricky one, but it's, again, very different. You're standing up. You're using a house as a kind of game board. And it's Hidden Traitor, which generally people don't know about if they've only played Monopoly and things. Do you own a fidget spinner? Yes, I do own a fidget spinner. And I used to play with it. And I feel like it's here. But I really need to stop pausing to look things up. Maybe ask me on the next Q&A and I'm going to have my fidget spinner ready. I don't know where my fidget spinner is. Sorry. I just lost the thing. Out of the Doge is the RPG in the car you were talking about. Yeah, that sounds awesome, and I bought that and just still haven't played it, so I need to get that played. What skin product do you use? You look hella young. Just moisturizer. Are you planning on starting a Twitch board gaming channel? No immediate plans, no. I mean, it'll be really cool. But I would imagine it's just a lot of work to get the camera set up right. I feel like if I'm still making videos in a year or two and the Patreon's got bigger and I could invest in some fancy equipment and kind of a regular setup, that could be cool. Yeah, I'd definitely look into it, but not right now. Hi, John. What game were you most disappointed with? You really thought you would love, but you just hated? There's probably quite a few of those. The one that's just springing to mind right now is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. I guess I didn't know I was going to love it, but when I first played it, I really loved it. And the app was amazing. And I did a whole review about how disappointed I was with it. It had so much potential. And those, I think, are some of the most disappointing things. And so I was, I was so annoyed with it by the end. Like, I just hated it. So that's up there. Generally, like, the more I play games, the more I find out about them first by maybe watching a Dice Tower review, or I know a bit about the game, I'm less surprised by games. So, so then that kind of curbs the disappointment, because I either just don't play the game in the first place because I know that I won't really care about it, or I'm going into it with low expectations, and so therefore you're less likely to be disappointed. So yeah, Manchester Madness is the one that I can think of right now. Yeah, I suppose, like, early on, I don't know. I don't dislike Cosmic Encounter, but the first play was a bit meh, and you just hear such amazing things, so you expect it to be amazing. But hated is way too strong, yeah. So Manchester Man is the only one that I hate. Any big ideas for video skits, songs you're extra excited about for this season? Sorry if this was already mentioned on the Patreon. I tend not to like give away the ideas up front too much, only because I might have a great idea and then love it, and then for whatever reason it doesn't work out, and then I don't want to disappoint anyone by getting them hyped and then not doing it. I've been trying to think of another song just in anticipation of doing one at some point, but it's really hard to find the right one. I got some good ideas for some videos. I'm more excited about some characters that I'm going to bring in and stuff like that. But I'm not going to give away just what it is just yet, because I think it would just be funnier to see it like afresh. Oh, okay. The Play with Death reference is from The Seventh Seal or from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. So which game would I play against death? So I guess which game would I be most likely to win at? Wow. I mean, I don't think there's really a game in my collection that I would feel confident winning at against anyone, which is maybe a bit... Oh, I tell you what, Codenames. I reckon I'm pretty good at Codenames. I would say that I'm better than most people at Codenames. I mean, it requires you to have a partner, though, so I can't really play against death in a two-player game. I mean, I've played a fair amount of Onitama. I reckon... yeah, that... Maybe a negotiation game, but I feel like death would be pretty mean at a negotiation game. So, yeah, let's go with Codenames and cheat a little bit. Thoughts on The Expanse? If you mean the TV series, I watched the first series of it, and I was kind of like watching it in the background. I liked aspects of it. I like the guy with the weird hair that's from Hung and what's his name? Thomas Jane. I like him in it. I felt like the crew of the whatever it is, they're all a bit like, nah. I didn't really think like any of those characters are that strong. And I liked, there was some ideas about it. Like I think the general concept of the world. And I mean, I've kind of forgotten bits now, but there's kind of second-class citizens and there's different planets, and there was some interesting ideas there, but I felt like there was also just too much focus on action, and I don't know. It just didn't grab me. And so the video game, probably not that interested. Sorry, the board game, probably not that interested. Road to Legend app is a great app. I haven't tried that, but yeah, I've heard it's good. Makes it easier to play. Our favorite party game at the moment is Voodoo. I did get that at the expo, and I'm ashamed to say that I still haven't played that. It's on my list of things to play. Yeah, it sounds a lot of fun. That's where you're rolling dice rapidly and you're putting curses on people where you can't do certain things. Maybe you've got to talk in a different voice or whatever. So yeah, I'm sort of tentatively excited by that. So yeah, I just need to play it. Best game with minis, best minis game. The difference between ratio of cardboard to plastic and presence of a board. Well, if I was to just say like my favorite game that has miniatures in, it would probably be something that, like, for example, New Angeles has miniatures and it totally doesn't need miniatures, but I really love the game. Spartacus is a game that I really love that has miniatures in, albeit like 4, and Sons of Anarchy has miniatures. They're kind of rubbish though. In terms of like big miniatures games, I don't have that many. But I do like Zombicide Black Plague. I haven't played it in a while. The last time we played a sort of more advanced scenario, and it was just so hard, and it just gets a bit ridiculous. Like, and the scenario, I just wish they, instead of the opening scenario is supposed to be maybe an hour and it's always longer, and then they just get longer and longer. And I don't really understand why they can't create a hard scenario that is short, because I want the game to get more interesting and to introduce more stuff, but I don't want to play it necessarily for 4 hours. But yeah. Do you think there is a need for an epic Pirates-themed board game? Yes, absolutely, yes. 100%. I mean, I do really like Merchants and Marauders, but it's a bit flawed, I would say. It's not streamlined. There's a lot of rules, and like combat, for example, is complicated, but I appreciate the dedication to its theme. I think that's really cool. And I think that Merchants and Marauders is probably the closest anyone's going to get for a long time. But I definitely think there's space for another one because of a few things with Merchants and Marauders. And what I'm really disappointed by was that a TV show that I loved was Black Sails. And a few years ago, the guys that make Spartacus and Sons of Anarchy, Gale Force 9, they announced they were making a Black Sails game. And I figured, great, they're going to make an awesome pirate game. And then it just never happened. I'm guessing it's never going to happen because the show's finished now. And I think that's a real shame because I thought that could have been really cool. I don't know if they would have made like an epic one, but I love that show. And like that shows a bit more about the intrigue between the characters. So maybe that would, but I still would have loved it. Red Dragon Inn works as a thematic, incredibly deadly drinking game. Yeah, I've never played that. I should try that sometime. Do you like Ren and Stimpy? I haven't watched Ren and Stimpy in like 20 years or something, but I think I liked it as a kid. I'm not so I just don't watch it. Thank you for just subbing, the person that just did. Do you enjoy more the actual game mechanics or the experience of playing? I've often found myself liking games that can be in the background while people got together, like Ticket to Ride, Perudo, or King of Tokyo. Yeah, 100% I enjoy the experience of playing. And it feels weird sometimes because I definitely review games or have reviewed games based on their mechanisms. And so I think it depends on the game sometimes. But yes, I'm there to socialize. I'm there to laugh with my friends, to interact with my friends. And so the experience of playing. So for me, like the best parts of some of my best games of Game of Thrones is when like you're off in the other room, like betraying someone else. You're telling one person one thing and telling someone else another, and it just feels so immersive. It feels like you're in the game and you're being a sort of backstabber. You're being Varys or whatever in Game of Thrones. So yeah, those experiences and party games where you're just making each other laugh, and it creates conversation, but it also creates stories that I will remember. So yeah, the experience of playing. But then you often need a good game to create those great experiences. Like there's a reason why Telestrations is maybe our favorite game to play with a big group to make everyone laugh. It's not just us sat around playing the game. It is Telestrations doing a lot of the work, you know. Yeah, shout out to One Scrub Chan. They're asking for it. I'm you know, I don't mind. Recent thread on the board game subreddit got a lot of chatter. Have you ever had really bad experiences with board game snobs? What did she do that we should all avoid doing when playing with a group? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I hear people like I definitely have sort of come across Eurogamers that will just denounce anything that like plays under, you know, that is lower than a weight of 3 on Board Game Geek, or doesn't have a massive rule book, or isn't designed by Stefan Feld or whoever, you know. I think people like that just suck. And people that look down, anyone that looks down on party games, there's so many people that look down on cooperative games. They don't think there's any point to it. And I think it's so hard for them to see our perspective, and because they are generally I found they are into a game because of the strategy and the mathsy element, and they get a real reward from seeing their strategies play out and their decisions bearing fruit. And I personally get a reward from the social interactions and the stories the games create, and that discussion between players. For me, like, I love co-op games because you're sharing stuff, and something like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, where you're cracking a case together and or an escape room game where you're all playing a part. And so the snobs that look down on that, I mean, they're just idiots, but I've definitely encountered them. I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if I mean, the thing is if I get even like a whiff of that, I will walk away or like play with someone else after that game. Or so like, I haven't really got much patience for it. So I haven't experienced probably the worst that they could get to, kind of thing. What is the game with the most cards that you've sleeved? E.g., I've sleeved TI3 and Millennium Blades. Yeah, well, I sleeved TI3 and I only played it once, and then I unsleeved it and sold it. So probably that. But I mean, I've sleeved Battlestar Galactica and all the expansions. That's a lot of cards. Merchants and Marauders with the expansion. That's a lot of cards. Dead of Winter and the standalone expansion. So yeah, I've done it with a lot of games. I don't like play Legendary or any. I don't own Dominion. I could imagine if I had like a really epic collection of a deck builder with like loads of expansions, that would probably beat out all of those. But I haven't got any of them. How do you deal with the snob, or how should we? I'm not very good at confrontation. I don't know if it's a British thing. I'm not really like. I don't have like it's like getting in a fight on the internet. I don't have the energy to get upset at someone and like, and it depends what it is, right? If they're being like a mega dick and like, if they're doing something that's effectively like unacceptable in a social environment, then obviously I'm going to stand up to them. But if they're just being a board game snob, like that, there's nothing, you know, you can't hold them to anything. So like, who can be bothered? Like, I give up, you know, I just like not bother with them, which is maybe not the right thing, but it's just kind of how I do things. Coward's way out. Oh, there was a message retracted. That's weird. How weird. Why do messages get retracted? Anyone know? Let me know in the comments. How often do you get together with friends and play or go to game nights? It varies, but I would say like I try to do maybe 3 times a week. Sometimes it might be like 4 or 5, and sometimes it might be 1. I guess I would try to do like 1 a week at least. Have you ever considered designing your own board game? Not for very long. Like a big board game, I just don't think I've got the right approach. I would love to collaborate on a board game and bring the kind of maybe the storytelling aspect to it, because like I'm a writer and that would be where my talents lie. I did very briefly prototype a card, like a party game, very similar to Fun Employed or Snake Oil, where you're pitching TV shows. And so I guess I did that, but I didn't really take it very far. We played it like once and it was fun, but it's just right now, well, for various reasons, I felt like the game, like there's too many other games like that out there and stuff. What are your thoughts on board game cafes and their role in the growth of the community? I think they're amazing. I think that Drafts in London does a great job of bringing in, it makes board games look so appealing to non-gamers because it's got a really sort of young, cool vibe to it. And I think there are going to be loads of people that hear about a board game cafe as a novelty. They're not all going to have a great experience, but so many of them are hopefully going to go along and they're going to play Pandemic or Ticket to Ride or something that they've never played before, and they're going to hopefully have their mind blown, or they're going to come back. They're going to make it a regular thing to meet with their friends and play board games at a cafe. I think they're brilliant. I hope to see more of them in London. Yeah, I like, there's no downside as far as I'm concerned. Like, of course, some people don't like the cost. And if you've got your own group, like I said, I don't go very often, but I think it's like amazing that they exist. And I would definitely use them. I would aim to use them if I really wanted to kind of wow someone at board games. I think it's great to be, I think you've got to not underestimate how good an atmosphere is to win people over. What are your thoughts on board game cafes? Oh, sorry. Wow. That's cool. I didn't like to play games, but a good friend changed my mind. He's making his own games, and it's so much fun to play test them. Awesome. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I played Catan. I enjoyed it, but it took me a few goes, I think. And unfortunately, I think some people might try one board game and then think that they hate all board games. I personally think, and I'm going to make a video about this, but I really think that there is a board game for everyone. And when I say that, I mean like party games and like all the different world of board games that we understand. But yeah, and so I just think it's going to take a while for you to find your niche, and some people are willing to put the time in, or like some people get lucky and they find the right one first time round, and some people might unfortunately just not. Worst movie I've ever seen, I guess that's what you're asking. Oh God, there are some, I mean, I've seen some terrible movies. I was just actually going through my IMDb list, like the rankings I'd done, so that I would have some films to talk about if somebody asked. And one that like the most recent one that I watched that I'm sure many people wouldn't agree with, was called Everybody Wants Some. And it was a Richard Linklater film. And I've liked a lot of his films. And it's set in the 70s at like people, it's like in Freshers Week at a uni or something, or a college or whatever. And oh man, just like the worst. I just hated it so much. It's so, the jokes, the writing, the characters, every single thing about it, I hated it. Whereas everyone else I was with just didn't really care. So it was just me. Which non-game board game or YouTuber would you like to collab with? Wow. I mean, just one of the big ones. That'd be great. Thanks. But I don't think anyone's out there watching me, sadly. There's like, yeah, I don't know. Weirdly, I said this in the last Q&A. I don't watch that much stuff outside of board games. I feel like it's kind of hard to find the content that you like on YouTube, and it tends to be about a specific thing. So I don't really like. I like video games, but I will never really watch video game stuff unless it's really funny. Because like I just don't need to watch videos about them. I'm not that into it. And it's the same with films and everything else. So I haven't really found like a lifestyle YouTuber or anything that I relate to, generally because they're sort of 10 years younger than me. Death does have all the time in the world to wait for you to buckle in a negotiation. Yeah. Yeah. Death would suck at a dexterity game. Yeah, maybe I'll play Death at a dexterity game. I don't know if I'm that good at dexterity games. If you could only play and keep one game, what would it be? Wow. I suppose it would like maybe be a game that I've played loads and I could imagine playing loads. Like, so you might say Onitama, but I would get bored really quickly. I love variety. In terms of like richness, like maybe Dead of Winter or Battlestar Galactica, because I've always had like really great experiences with them. Yeah, but I hate the idea of that because that is not me at all. I've never seen Twin Peaks. I have a gun on your head. I'm asking you to name your favorite game and its biggest fault. I find it really hard to pick a favorite game, but I think when people ask me, I would probably, to some people I would say Pandemic, and its biggest fault is probably just that so many people can just feel like they want to tell everyone what to do, and there isn't massively a way around that. And then the other one would be Dead of Winter, I would often say. And its biggest fault is that it doesn't, there are so many people that play that game and they just don't really get their private objectives, that they think it's pointless. And so they don't go for them. they don't really try hard enough for them, or they don't see, they don't keep that. It's so hard to describe, but it can fall down. The whole everyone's got their own private objective, and then there's also potentially a hidden traitor. It doesn't always work for some people. And so I don't know exactly where the weakness is, but it definitely seems to be a weakness because so many people have issues with it. Yeah. And also I could say downtime, I guess. Dead of Winter downtime can be bad. Which board game looks the most biteable? New York Slice, the pizza game, definitely. You can assemble a games evening with people from any time in history. Who would you invite to play? Ooh, oh, wow. I guess for me, like, I just want people that are entertaining. So I would like, and if I could get anyone from history, I would just invite all my favorite, like, comedy actors or comedians, which is a bit, tiny bit boring. But I mean, like, I'm sure Oscar Wilde, like, you know, people like that would be vaguely entertaining, but I reckon that they would just take over the room and not let anyone else talk. So, yeah, it would just be anybody that's sort of funny, like some celebrity that's just really charismatic and you can just imagine having a great time with. No one, especially in history, because I don't really, you know, you go far enough back before recorded history, sorry, not recorded history, but like sort of audio and video recordings, and you don't get a vibe of whether someone's entertaining or not. And so, and you kind of imagine from like 100 years ago that everyone's just dour and miserable. And so I'm sure that's not the case, but yeah, so. Everyone's talking about eating board game pieces. Is there a game that you have found so complicated that you could just not work out? Kind of, not really. Robinson Crusoe, when we first played it, was the first rule book was terrible. It was so bad, and it was such arduous. But I'd heard so many great things about it. I knew that I would like the game, so I forced myself to get through it. And then effectively the second time round, I got First Martians, I pre-ordered it, and I set it all up, and I'd read the rule book once myself, but at that point, Rodney's video hadn't come out, and we tried to play it, and we just gave up. Like, I just couldn't be bothered. And I've since, well, I'm trying to sell it at the moment. I just decided, like, whilst I liked the idea of the app, I didn't actually think it was adding that much. And then the theme was just like, I'm not that fussed about the Mars thing, and it just seemed really scientific in a dull way. And I honestly believe that it, you know, that as many people have said, if you play through the campaign, there's some really interesting stuff. I'm sure there is, but I can't be bothered. Like, I don't think it's like saying to me that the 10th episode of this series, this TV series, is amazing. You've got to watch all other 9 episodes first. I'm not going to do that. I did it once with The Wire. I watched, like, probably took me like 5 episodes to get into The Wire, and it was amazing. But yeah, the First Martians is not The Wire of board games. And in terms of other games that are so complicated, I don't think so. I mean, I think I've pretty much just like powered through with, I don't think I've ever like tried to play a game other than First Martians and just ditched it. But maybe I got in some help from like watching a video. What's the best thing about Hero Quest? I haven't played it, so I don't know. By the way, I mean, we've been here for a while now. So I'm gonna wrap things up at like let's say on the hour, so in 15 minutes. So just so you know, unless of course it stops before then. Oh, I see. Right, they're explaining why the message was retracted. How do you feel about having a large board game collection, both in terms of the space they take up and the fact that they you would have to play a game a day just to play them once, a year each. Yeah, it's mixed feelings really, because it does feel excessive to have that many games. The space used to be like more of an issue, but we've moved to somewhere slightly bigger, and so it's not so bad now. But I also kind of get away with it a bit more because I've got the YouTube channel. I feel like it's slightly more acceptable to have more games. I'm not saying that anyone should have less games than me or whatever, but it depends where you live, doesn't it? There's various reasons like to justify. So I do think it's a bit weird, but at the same time, I love variety. And I've got a bit of a thing. If I've had an amazing experience with a game, even if it was like 3 years ago, I want to have that experience again. I don't want to sell it. I know some people are very much of the mind that if I'm not playing it, then I should get rid of it. And I don't think that at all, because why would I get rid of the game that has given me one of the best experiences I've ever had with board games? That's crazy to me. But once you start to build up, and you've got to, and then you're saying, what, there's like 100 games that mean that way to you? And obviously that's not the case. And so then I tend to go back to games, and as time progresses and you've maybe played other games that do similar things but differently, you start to realize that you don't need all of them. So it's good to go back to something and work through. And so I feel like even though I have got a big collection, I feel like it wouldn't be that big. If people stopped making board games now and I was just going back through the collection, there would be more that I would get rid of. I just don't have the time to kind of be cycling through and going back, because I'm always playing like new ones. Yeah, things that annoy you when playing teaching. Mine is when people won't let me explain the rules and say, come on, let's play already, without knowing the rules. Yeah, I mean, definitely had that. And some things they need to know up front. And yeah, it's just, they're just slowing the whole thing down. Got a price tag on the bottom of your glass. You're a cool dude. Yeah, recently bought from IKEA. In fact, can I get that off? There you go. I'll take that off for you. Do you think all the new board game ports released in app stores can bring more people in the hobby? Have you tried any? I don't know about that. I don't really, because like there are so many mobile video game apps, right? And it's like a whole nother world that I have no understanding of. And as far as I know or could imagine, none of our board games that have become apps have like got big within that world. You know, they haven't created a life of their own outside of tabletop. So I'm not really sure about that. I could imagine maybe saying to someone, oh, try this game on the app. But I think most of those games are better when played in person. Most of them. Like, I think an IRIM is really cool as an app. So I've played a bunch. I played an IRIM, and Patchwork is good, and Paperback's really good. And those are for me, those are the ones that I like, the simple ones that don't take too long and stuff. And they're really well made. And but I don't know if they're going to bring more people in. I'm sort of not sure on that. I think it could get people more established. Like maybe you play Pandemic real life once, then you find out there's an app, and you really get into that, and then I think that could snowball. Telestrations with Picasso would be interesting. Yeah. How do you prepare to play a new game with friends? Read rules first, play through on your own or with Timmy? Yeah, I generally just read the rules. It's not always foolproof. And then if it's heavier, like for example, with Wasteland Express Delivery Service, I watched Rodney Smith's video, and that really helped. And then I generally set it up before they come, because that can take a lot longer. But I tend not to play through on my own so much, just because like time. But it's, you know, if you want to be a perfect friend, then maybe you should. In terms of games with hidden roles such as New Angeles or Dead of Winter, do you prefer to be the traitor / Federalist, or do you not mind? I find I like to backstab people. Yeah, I don't really mind either way. It is fun, but sometimes you can really hate yourself for screwing up. I think in Battlestar Galactica, I like to be a Cylon. Dead of Winter, I don't think I mind too much, but I definitely, you don't want to play like loads of games and not give it a try. You want a mixture. And New Angeles, yeah, I think like I think I don't mind either way. I think there's still like great games on either side. I think in something like the Resistance, those kind of shorter ones, it's more fun to be the spy, or at least it's less fun to not be the spy. Are you planning to have an Essen meetup? Yes. No concrete plans, but yes, I'm planning to do one with No Pun Included and John Gets Games. So I'll mention that, I'm sure, on the channel. I'll bring Bex, yeah. Well, we're in Germany. Yeah, there's plenty of Bex. What is... what is your part-time job? I do freelance writing. It can vary. I've been asked to go and help out at Essen, but not sure if I should. Convince me it's worth the cost. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because I see Essen from a different perspective than other people. For me, it's like, it's so exciting to kind of see all those new games, and I want to talk about them on the channel and stuff. But so many of them, certainly more and more these days, are going to eventually come to the UK. Now, there are a few that you might miss out on. And it's fun to go. If you're into kind of hunting out niche games, it was really exciting for me last year to find Gooseberry, this tiny game, and get to play that with the designer whilst he was demoing it. And, you know, and then it wasn't released until recently as the Chameleon, so nobody else had it. And it's the same with When I Dream. When I Dream still isn't out. It's an amazing party game, and I'm one of only so many hundred people in the world to be playing the game for the last year. And so that's what it's for. It's not especially for playing games. You can do that in the evening if you stay at a hotel in the center, or maybe if you went with friends. I think it could be really good to go with a core group of friends. And then really it's just about kind of taking in the spectacle of it all. If you like big crowds and kind of atmosphere, then there's that. And it's about buying stuff. So you kind of need to have lots of money. Or it's about demoing lots of things. There is that opportunity to try before you buy. So you could just go there and try loads and loads of games, and then come back home and buy the ones in the UK that you liked. But I don't know, it's a long way, I guess, to go, and a lot of money to spend to do that. It's probably better off just buying the games and then selling on the ones you don't like. We only get money to pass it around. You'll remember the experience more than the cash. Go. That's an interesting take on it. Yeah, it is a fun experience. You know, I'm definitely gonna. I guess as I continue to go, they will blur into one. But the first Essen was definitely iconic, and yeah, it's, you know, I stayed in some random German town, and people were talking to me in German, thinking that I was German, and it was just, you know, there's experiences that you don't get in the UK, and you don't get just playing board games in London or wherever. IKEA Wembley is best IKEA. It's massive. It's, yeah, I guess I mean, I did go there recently. I don't know if you knew that. Was it on the label? That's impossible. What? I'm afraid Timmy and I don't have a favorite Solid game because we like to play games together. But I do like an IRIM. I play that on the app. So I suppose that's the closest I come to playing solo. But I like playing it two-player, cooperatively. Best hidden agenda or defector game. In terms of big one, I love like Battlestar Galactica. I guess I already talked about that. But I don't know about like I want to do a video about the smaller ones because I don't know what my favorite one is. Maybe the Resistance, but I need to play more of them and kind of do a proper video. How did your second best man speech go? The first one was absolutely brilliant. Well, I haven't actually done the second one yet. That's not till December. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing my first one a few years ago. And if anyone wants to check it out, if you go to youtube.com/Jon Purkis, maybe, or just type in Jon, I don't know, type in Jon Purkis best man speech. And yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I'm quite proud of it. There's some good jokes in there. What's the worst writing job you've had that you're allowed to talk about? And the best? Oh, I don't know. I've written on some like TV shows that never made it, and they were just some weird ideas. I don't know if I'll like name them. I mean, not that anyone would know them, but it's more just, I don't know, if anyone was to ever see it and I was just slagging off their idea or whatever. But there was just some just weird, peculiar, like when TV producers are trying to they're trying to come up with something new and fresh and like slightly quirky to get commissioned, and they're just going a bit out there, and yeah, it's just weird. So yeah, that. And the best, well, in terms of like the most successful thing was I've written on a number of episodes of The Amazing World of Gumball, which is this cartoon show on Cartoon Network. It's very successful. So that was fun, like being a part of that. But probably the best was like getting to write my own. Well, I say my own. I got to write a sitcom for BBC Two, and it was just a great experience from start to finish. And I was very new to it at the time, and yeah, it was just great. Oh, no, not the only IKEA anyone in London goes to is Wembley. I go to the one in Tottenham, the Edmonton one. So, Yeah, thanks for playing at Expo, Anthony. Yeah, and well, I'll see you next year, I guess, or if you come to Essen. Do you have a favorite animal? Any pets to talk of? Favorite animal? I like squirrels for some reason. Just cute things like hedgehogs and like I don't know, anything that's like on the or section of Reddit, or R, I don't know how you say that. And I don't have any pets. It's kind of not really doable. It's insane how many shows never make it past pilot, let alone pre-production. There's a podcast called Dead Pilot Society for anyone who's interested but doesn't want to get into something too dry. Yeah, I mean, in America, it's way more, but they put more money into it, and rightly so. They got more money, and they tend to. But wow, it must be heartbreaking to have like a really good pilot made, and then it for whatever reason doesn't get commissioned to series, yeah, but it's the same in the UK to a lesser extent, and I guess it's just they haven't found a better system for testing things out, and I kind of understand it, but it's also frustrating from a writer's point of view. Is Moon a favorite film, or do you just love the great poster? It is an amazing poster. Like, I mean, I'm not talking because I own it, but just like love the artwork on it. But yeah, it's an absolute favorite film. I was talking about it earlier. Also, writing for Gumball, did they write the scripts first, or did you work off a storyboard or something? Yeah, so it was in stages. So some writers would come up with like the outline. So they'd have a general idea, and then they'd come up with a plot outline. And then there would be a first draft, which was where I would work. And within that plot outline, coming up with lots of jokes and ideas, sort of little skit ideas, trying to make it funny and just effectively give loads of material. And then another group of writers would do the second draft, and then it would be storyboarded after that. So storyboarding came later. Does your unwigged family play board games now? Not really. I mean, I've played board games a bit at Christmas with my parents, but they don't play without me. Have you failed to turn someone over to how awesome tabletop is? That's a good question. I mean, I don't know, because like I would never say like anyone's completely done. There's probably friends that I've played games with, and I've maybe got a vibe that they don't really want to play again massively, so I haven't maybe invited them back. But it's hard to know, because like it's like, are they just humoring me? Everyone's very polite, and so I think sometimes they're happy to play games because they want to hang out. but whereas other people are, you know, love the games and stuff. So I would say I haven't failed, but, and then it also comes down to the type of game. So some people are quite up for coming around to play like party games like Telestrations, and that's cool. Like that's their style of game. And so I think there's always something for someone, but then at the same time, they haven't exactly then necessarily gone on and like bought loads of games and they're playing them every weekend. They would just kind of play them. That's the thing, is I guess some people just don't see it. It's like how people approach comedy gigs or something. Like you would go and see some stand-up if somebody maybe invited you and you'd laugh and have a great time, but you wouldn't necessarily rush back to do it again for whatever reason. Maybe you just prefer spending your money on other stuff or your time on other stuff. Sci-fi, is it a favorite genre? Of films, but only that very specific. I was talking about it before, but that very sort of how I would describe like existential sci-fi. I don't really have a sci-fi author that I'm most fan of. Favorite theme, sci-fi, fantasy, industrial. None of those for games. My favorite theme would be, well, I was talking about it earlier, like real world themes. But specifically like anything about life and people, and then medical stuff. And maybe police, like that's a theme I really love. I did love Arrival. Yeah, I was talking about it before. Absolutely loved it. Amazing film. I cried at the end of it. I have turned a lot of people onto board games, but distant friends and family have a hard time finding a game community. Any tips on getting one running? Basically, how to make friends. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard, and I think I'm really lucky to be in London where there are thousands of other people that are looking to play board games. And I don't know what I would do in a small town. I think because it's really like you've got to know these people in the first place. You've either got to find loads of people that are already into board games, or you've got to make friends and then try and get them into board games. And both of those are quite hard, and I'm afraid I don't really have any great tips. I need to wrap up now, so I'm just going to do the last question. Are you at all interested in game design? I am not especially, just because I like to play lots of different games, and I think to really design an amazing board game, you've got to play it, I don't know, I don't even know how many times. Let's say 50, probably it's 200 or something, but you know, a lot of times, and you've got to think about stuff that it's not why I like games. You've got to think about balancing mechanisms and balancing cards. And I appreciate the games have that, because if they didn't, they would be, they wouldn't work. But I don't care about that aspect of it. Sorry, guys, I'm going to say goodbye now. So thank you for everyone for your questions. Thank you for coming to this Q&A. The plan is, well, I promised my actual heroes on Patreon and all of the people pledging above that all future Q&As are going to be Patreon things. So I just wanted to do this one for all the other YouTubers. But thank you to everyone for watching. But thank you to everyone who has, you know, watched the channel over the last 2 years. And I hope that I answered some of your questions. You know, as I sort of mentioned in the last video, I'm working on the next video. I'm excited about all the stuff coming up, and I hopefully see you in the comments on future videos and stuff like that. So thanks for all your questions. It was great fun, and yeah, it was great hanging out with you all, and hopefully see some of you at Essen and in future videos. Bye.